Today we have with us the lovely and charming Amy Leigh Mercree. She is an author, a media personality, and an expert dating, relationship, and wellness coach. Amy speaks internationally and brings groups on adventure vacations around the world, focusing on kindness, joy, and wellness, which I really love. That sounds great. She teaches workshops around the country, and she is the author of, and I love this title, The Spiritual Girl's Guide to Dating, Your Enlightened Path to Love, Sex, and Soulmates. And that is the Empowered Dater's Toolkit. She blogs at amyleighmercree.com and writes articles for Huffington Post, yourtango.com, Cupid's Pulse, and so many others. So welcome, Amy. It's a joy to have you here.
It's wonderful to be here, Neil. I really appreciate you asking me to participate.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about shadow relationships, and each one of my experts has a different take on that. So I wanted to get what does shadow relationships mean to you?
That's a really cool thing that you've brought up, and what a neat topic for a seminar. To me, shadow relationships evokes two things. One, it brings up for me our shadow selves and the way those parts of ourselves that we haven't integrated interact with others and create our relationships. So these relationships to me would be somewhat fueled by these shadow parts. So obviously if we integrate those, then we'll make better choices in our romantic lives. That's the first thing it brings up. So the second thing that the term shadow relationships evokes for me are relationships from the past that have that shadow energy, whether they're with people we knew as children or different things like that. So relationships that are still casting a shadow on us. And that, again, if we were to clear that or work through that, we would feel more healthy and well.
Yeah,
So,
that's absolutely, I love the way you put it, nice and succinct, but how on earth do we clear that? How on earth do we heal that? And most of the time we don't even see it when we're coming from our shadow or affected by our shadow. So, you know, what is your recommendation?
that's a good question. It's probably like, the $1 million question for all of us. I think something that is really, really important is to identify our unmet childhood needs, because I see with a lot of my clients, my coaching clients, that really fuels our behavior and ends up propelling us to go into those shadow relationships. So that means even if we had the best parents, well-intentioned, everything, let alone those who didn't, but even if we did, nobody's perfect. Nobody's going to be able to meet a child's emotional needs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Life happens. So what was missing? Some of us have abandonment types of issues. Some of us really long to feel validated. Some of us have issues around betrayal and trust. We need to identify those and then really identify what were those needs. I needed to feel unconditionally loved. I needed to feel like I was approved of, whatever. And we need to give that to ourselves. If we can source that kind of feeling and whatever, the emotional need, if we can fill it from within, then we don't have to rely on an external source like a relationship to fill it. So that just takes all this pressure off the relationship. And then we don't, A, go into a relationship only to fill that need, or even worse, B, choose to create a relationship that repeats an old pattern where, oh, I'm getting abandoned again. Oh, I still don't feel validated. Oh, now I can't trust anybody just like before. We enact these patterns. So to stop it, we need to figure out what was unmet, what we need emotionally, and make sure we have that before we go into any relationship, I think. Or if we're in one, identify it, figure it out, meet it, and then watch how the relationship changes, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, I know for sure that it does change when we become more and more aware of ourselves. It's just not always so easy, is it? It's
No,
because how do you, it's easy to say figure it out, but how
mm-hmm,
do you figure it
do it.
out?
Mhm.
Do you have any tips for how somebody can see what their issue is, what their unmet childhood needs are?
I do. I think self reflection is a good start. So sitting down and really giving some thought to if there are patterns that you notice in past relationships. And then also kind of going back in time. Sometimes journaling helps, like journaling, saying, now I'm going to try to write or journal as my 6-year-old self or my 12-year-old self. And try just kind of letting that flow. I mean, it's a little bit, you know, awkward maybe at first for people, but if you do that, you can start letting that flow and you might find things coming out like, oh, I really wish my dad was here more, or I really wish my mom told me, even though I didn't get great grades like my friends, she knew I was really smart, or, you might find these things starting to come out. And then again, reflect some more, look at it. Oh, okay, so I really wanted validation there, or I really wanted time spent with someone being present, whatever it is, reflect on that. It's really putting time in to yourself, essentially. I mean, if you put in the time, then you do get the rewards. So then once you've identified that, I think a good way to start is to create affirmative statements that would be saying, I approve of myself, I validate and acknowledge my achievements, or I am present to myself and I take the time to be here loving me, I'm worth it, whatever it is. So create those affirmative statements based upon that introspection and those, journaling and stuff. And then I think it's super effective to take affirmative statements and put them in our environment in print, because we can't help but read what's around us. So just a post-it note on the bathroom mirror with your affirmative statements. So every day, every night, you see them, you read them. If you really want to get crazy, you say them out loud, and you start to get that into your subconscious and fill up what was missing.
That is such a great tip. I mean, you took us from just becoming aware of it to actually healing it, starting to heal it, starting to get that into your subconscious. And I know for sure that this works because way back when I was doing a lot of affirmations, and what I did was I just got myself, a little recorder
Ooh,
recorder, recorded them in my own voice. And they say it's really strong to your subconscious if you hear it in your own voice.
that's a great idea.
Yeah,
That's
I don't
really
know how we would do it with today's technology. I mean, we have our little recorders on our iPhones, but then you
that's
have to sit there and punch the voice memo all the time, right?
true. That's true. I use the on my iPhone the video memo because I was just in a short film and I had to remember lines.
Okay.
And yeah, I told you about that. So I put it on the video. Even though you're not looking at the video, you can play it. But that's true. You'd have to keep playing it. So you probably have to like say it over and over.
Or say like 15 minutes worth of affirmations or something.
Yeah,
And yeah, and
yeah.
just
Mhm.
play it once. Yeah. And have it at your fingertips whenever you have a free moment. Put it
Well,
on the earplugs. Put in the earplugs when you're walking or running or something.
yeah, our phones are with us all the time now, so that's
That's
a great way to do it.
that's it. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I want to talk about your book because it sounds so exciting. The spiritual girl's guide to dating, and tell us, what does your book cover?
My book covers kind of the A to Z of what you need to do from if you're single and wanting to find your life partner, but wanting to do all this emotional work, this mental work to get in the space of finding the right person, and then what to do as you date, what to do as you attempt to date, what to do, like the energetics of flirting, how we're exchanging energy when we're flirting, the pros and cons of that, and the wellness side of that. The side of things with also intimacy, like the energy exchange when we are intimate with somebody and how that can positively or negatively affect our lives, how to identify red flags in relationships. I mean, it's just
That's a good one.
it's a Z guide, yeah. And it's also great for men. I've actually had a lot of men read it who have really liked it. It's for all sexual orientations. It applies to everybody. And people in relationships find a lot to help or to enhance their lives as well. Because it's from a perspective of somebody who's dating, but a good portion of it applies to if you're partnered as well. So it's kind of the energetic mechanics and the emotional mechanics of romance.
Wow, that sounds great. It sounds to me like the inner book of dating, like the inner,
Yeah.
coming from the inside out. There's so many dating tips out there for how to act and how to dress and how to
Yeah.
behaviors and stuff like that. But I like this approach from the inside out because once you have your insides sorted out, then everything else just kind of starts to flow for you. So I'm curious, do you have anything in there about how to heal the shadow or how the shadow comes up around dating?
It's a good question. And I don't know if I use the word shadow.
Yeah, you might not, but
But it's funny because I used to write articles on that years before about how to integrate your shadow and things like that. It's almost like after you write a book, you go, oh, I should have included that too. Um, but there is a lot as far as, like, we talked about some of that inner child stuff. And there's things about, like, the energetics of like the phantom pain of past relationships. So there's definitely things that talk about the shadow in relationships just without using that exact vernacular.
sure, sure. I mean, I'm very clear that all my experts have different words for it. Like you say, childhood, unfinished childhood business, unfinished childhood needs. Why don't you take us through an example of, like, let's say one thing that might show up as a shadow, as whatever you want to call it, in the dating arena, and take us through how it might show up and how might we overcome it. Maybe it's even an example from a client you've worked with or something like that.
Sure, sure. A great example would be, this is a classic for women too. Women, I'd like to think it's changing, but to a certain degree, we're socialized to be quote unquote nice, you know? And so, not everyone, but some of us also will shy away from confrontation. So, if we kind of rewind back in time and we look at the programming somebody got in childhood, whatever cultural programming they happen to be subjected to, not necessarily even from their families, and then we fast forward through their dating experiences, we might come upon somebody who keeps manifesting or choosing partners, because it has a lot to do with who we choose. Someone who's choosing partners who are domineering, dominating, controlling, and essentially oppressive. So, something that it might come around back to is that person going within and recognizing the emotional energy of oppressing oneself by not expressing opinions, needs, wants by being nice or, on that submissive side of things.
Okay, well,
So,
I gotta stop you right there because that is so powerful. In other words, if you are attracting somebody who seems to be dominating you or oppressing you, you
yeah,
got to look and see what you're doing to yourself. And I have so many people say, "Oh, I'm nothing like that. I'm nothing like that," which you would think somebody who's sweet and
right.
kind and giving in always would never see in themselves anything oppressive. But I think you bring up the key. What is your relationship to yourself? You might be oppressing yourself by remaining quiet and not speaking up for your needs. So I love that. So please continue. This is
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, that's like the classic example of relationships as mirrors. And you hit the nail on the head in the sense from the outside, somebody would never think, wow, that really sweet, nice, slightly submissive lady has a controlling and oppressive side, except it's turned inward. You
That's
know,
that's
it's
just brilliant. Yeah.
just squishing them into conforming to whatever mental, cognitive constructs they've got going on, whether cultural based, family based, or a bunch of other things. All the things that shape our behavior. So that's a really important thing, I think, is looking at who have we dated and what were the commonalities, what were the shadow like qualities, and turning that mirror inward. And just, the more I think we unravel these things about ourselves, the healthier we are. I also think the more of our vital life force we've set free or unleashed to flow through our bodies, and then the higher level we're able to partner at.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So do you think that just becoming aware, like, if that submissive person looks
Mm-hmm.
within and goes, "Oh my God, I've been oppressing myself for so long," just becoming aware of it, will that help them to move out of it? I mean, how does a person with that kind of habit that's been ingrained for so long now turn into somebody who maybe asserts themselves more and voices their needs? I mean, it's got to be difficult at first, so maybe you have some tips to help them get through that.
Yeah, I think it is difficult at first, although that awareness is so huge because then people can start engaging in self observation and see when do I do that, or there are habitual times when I do that. And then the next step is okay, so how do I change that behavior? I'm a big fan of the action steps. So I would say to that person, now it's time for you to lay out 3 action steps to start where you will change that behavior, which might be when I catch myself with my family censoring what I would say, oppressing myself into a certain box, controlling my reaction instead of being authentic, I'm going to pause, I'm going to notice, and then I'm going to try to express what I really think or feel. That would be an example of an action step.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's great.
And it can also be something fun, like, I'm always so buttoned down and aware of how I seem to people or look to people. I'm going to go to something really out of the box, like I don't know, dancing thing where people throw around paint in a park and just unleash oneself. It can be a fun action step too, so it gives us some positive reinforcement, like it's a good thing to change this pattern, not just our family's going to be kind of annoyed with us. So,
Yeah,
well,
that's the risk.
that's the risk. And that's the statement that when we show ourselves that we matter, that we're going to risk that, we're not going to be what we're supposed to be, we're going to honor who we are. That's when we start giving ourselves the message that we matter, and we start to create an internal environment of emotional safety. And to me, that environment of emotional safety is the number one thing that allows us to choose the right partner and a emotionally safe environment in our external world because we've created it in our internal world.
Wow, you said that so well. That is so
Thank you.
perfect. Creating the emotional safety within yourself, because inside of you, you're no longer oppressing yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And once you step out, maybe your family isn't going to exactly give you that emotional safety,
Yeah.
and then it's going to be a matter of practice, right?
For
At first it might not be so easy, and then you try it again, and my experience is you might not catch yourself right away,
mm-hmm.
and then you'll catch yourself faster and faster and sooner and
Yeah.
sooner. And so it's
Yeah.
it's a process. It's a process to actually change our habits.
It is, and I think a lot of times we notice it after the fact, but that's still great.
Yeah.
That's still awareness that gets us closer and closer to changing it.
It's still growth. Still
Mm-hmm.
going in the right direction.
Yeah.
So I noticed on your website that you talk about essential steps to turning around your love life. So I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if you want to tell us one or two of those steps for the big absolute. You call it the love life rehab. I like that term.
Yeah.
It's so cute.
I like fun little terms
Sure.
and alliteration.
Yeah.
Uh, so that concept of emotional safety that we touched on is it's the overarching goal of what we're doing to create that within. So my number one tip is, it kind of is threefold, but it goes through really the essence of what this book is about, which is, the first thing is seeing ourselves like we're worthy of respect and kindness. And sometimes I even use the word sacred for that. Not in a religious context in any way, just in a totally spiritual but non-denominational way. So the first thing is seeing ourselves as sacred. The second thing is seeing our potential dates as well as other people as sacred. Same thing. And then selecting partners romantically to even date that we're confident see us and themselves as sacred. So my tip, which is literally what I did, because I was like the guinea pig for this entire system, and I'm happily married now.
It works. It works.
Is to make like a little poster and place it above your bed, and it can say, I am sacred, or I am worthy of respect and kindness and love, whatever, resonates for you. But I am sacred is nice because it's like short. Same thing, you see that print every night before you go to bed. And so you're beginning to bring that energy of sacredness into your sleep and where you might potentially have a romantic relationship at some point, the bedroom. And sacredness can be, totally awesome and passionate and stuff. It's not anything restrictive, but it's about loving yourself and honoring yourself and knowing that you can trust yourself to act from that space and make choices from that space. So that's actually my number one tip.
Well, that is absolutely beautiful, to find others who see themselves as sacred, and therefore will see you as sacred. And as you point out, sex can be sacred. I mean, it's physical, we enjoy pleasure, but there is a union, there is something that is so much larger than the two people just having pleasure, if that's your choice, if that's what you want to make it. And I love that. The word sacred, as you're using it, other people could define it as respect, love. It's love, it's care, it's cherishing. And all that, those are all the things that really make it sacred. And that is beautiful. I love the way that you put that. That's awesome.
Thank you.
So you also offer tips called blissed out real relationships. So Tell us about some of the skills and tips that you teach there in that one.
Sure, some of those are simple things along the lines of for couples identifying like our hot button issues, and hopefully both people are able to be conscious about that, and somebody stepping in and saying, wait, we need to take a pause. Basically, before we have the same fight again, let's pause, let's take at least 10 minutes, then we'll come back and see if we're in a better space. So the pausing is a huge tip for that. And the second one, it's kind of along the lines of the sacred thing in a way, but it's basically both people in a relationship making a commitment to kindness, no matter what. And so that means whatever we say or do, we make a commitment that it's going to be kind. We may be mad, we may have, marriage is all kinds of things come up, and especially in our culture, marriage is kind of like the bucket that has to be everything from your lover to your best friend to your roommate to everything. It's inevitable there's going to be conflict. But if both people make a commitment to kindness, that means when we might not speak or behave kindly, we take responsibility to stop and make a different choice.
That is great. And as you say, it is a commitment because the feelings come up and you just need to express that feeling sometimes. But if you can couch it in a way that you're very clear that you're not going to hurt the other person in the way that you couch it. And that's a whole other subject, how we communicate these feelings as they come up. But I like that, just make a commitment to kindness. That is very simple, very straightforward. Mm-hmm. And that's really great. That's
one of the tips. And if you can't live up to that commitment at that moment, then you take a pause until you can.
Yeah, that's a good thing. It's like a timeout. Let's just, go into our corners and get centered and get back to our true selves. I call it the true self instead of the defensive self or the survival self, the triggered self. Yeah. Amy, the half hour has gone by so quickly.
I
know. We could have really gotten into some really good deep stuff here, I can tell. So I so appreciate your being on the call and being part of my summit, Heal Your Shadow Relationships. I really do admire your work. I really appreciate you being here. So thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate you inviting me, and it's been so fun to talk with you, and I really enjoy your work too. Same thing, I looked at your site and went, oh, I really like this. I hope to talk to her. So it just
worked out. I'm glad it worked out. Okay. Thanks everybody for watching and listening, and see you next time.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.